Well, greetings everybody and welcome to this world's edition of the Inworld Review. This is a kind of chat show where we look at what's going on in virtual worlds, although largely virtual worlds that use Open Simulator as their platform and are connected together via the wonderful hypergrid. But we do sometimes cover other worlds as well, if they're relevant to the conversation, should I say. Anyway, we're well into the new year now. We took a week off last week of, it's still sort of the new year, getting back into the rhythm of things and finding guests and stuff. But we are back this week. I'm joined as usual by James Atloud, who's multitasking on all our invisible cameras here, as well as his place in the seat, so to speak. So welcome, James.
Well, thank you, Mel. I'm glad to be here.
And my two actual guests this week, as it were, both have actually been on the show in one form or another before, but in different guises, or rather one of them has. Firstly, almost a regular really, every few months we have a bad guy. It's Leslie Kling, who of course runs a grid called Tangle Grid, known principally on the hypergrid as sort of the Expo Grid, I think we call it, don't we? And,
pretty much, yes.
Yeah, so from the Expo Grid known as Tangle Grid, and we'll be learning about an expo coming up there and general sort of goings on. My other guest is Tia Winters, and she was recently did a video interview in what I guess is her home grid at the moment, DigiWorlds, about, is it Sing City?
Kling City, K-E-N-G.
Kling City, right. And also she's got her own region in Avatar Haven. But oddly enough, I know Tia of late, mostly because until a few months ago, she was the sort of person I always bumped into when I logged into Sciencebase, Adam Frisbee's world. Well, him and others, of course, which we have covered now and again. It's a sort of mesh-based world. It's sort of a bit like Linden Labs Sansar, except probably a few hundred light years ahead of Sansar. In other words, it works. Which, well, never mind. So we might talk about that. But of course, I bumped into you here a few weeks ago, Tia, and of course you'd actually arrived back here, and you were looking for work, and we were talking about what was around, and since then you seem to have landed in DigiWorld. So welcome back to the show. Whatever form
thank you so much.
Whatever form you're taking today, shall we say? So. With the new year heading in and stuff, we were on air a few minutes ago with Meta World News, and something worth pointing out is that Virtual Belfast's Maritime Club is actually today, this very day, and I'm possibly at this very moment or shortly, celebrating its 10th anniversary. And I don't normally mention it too many individual things like this, but I'm going to mention this one simply because it's only a year ago that OpenSim itself celebrated its 10th anniversary, the Maritime Club is one of these venues, you can't really ignore them. I mean, if there's an event there, I seem to get a separate message from about 500 different channels. In other words, I can't ignore the fact they're happening, usually at the same time as my show, which doesn't help. But, so it's been going 10 years in a destination. It's on OS Grid, in fact. There's basically on OpenSim. It's a major achievement. So it's almost as long as the platform itself has existed. So I'd like to give our congrats to Stefan and co over at Virtual Belfast on OS Grid. The first kind of event of the season. Now, Leslie, didn't you have a birthday or something that you celebrated on Tangle Grid in the last few weeks, or am I completely, got my wires completely crossed? I had a feeling there was something Tangle Grid has just finished doing, other than the regular expo.
My RL birthday, but...
Oh! Maybe it was that. Maybe there's somebody gave me that by mistake. Okay, false alarm there. Okay, so we're looking at events coming up, basically. Anyway, let's start with you then. I think. Obviously, we know Tangle Grid is the Expo Grid, and with the new year coming, I think the last. You had a Halloween event, although which came first? Was the last one Halloween or no? It would have been the steampunk one, wouldn't it?
Well, you guys, the Safari group was at the Halloween one, I think.
Yeah.
And then we had a Christmas one after that.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Or was it you at the Steam one? You were either at the Steam one or the Halloween one. Maybe it was the Steam one. I can't remember.
I was at Halloween one, and I was at the Steam one. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I probably I don't always come with Safari. Sometimes I pop in where it's nice and quiet, you know. So go figure. Okay, I'm actually going to put up on our screen here, be on one of our cameras shortly, I suspect, your sort of advert for the Sci-Fi Expo, which is the new one coming up, and this one starts on February 5th, going to March 5th here. Obviously, I can read, and our viewers can read what's on the sign, but maybe you'd like to tell us a bit about what's in store with this one.
Well, it's like it says, sci-fi, so it don't have to be like Star Trek or anything. It can be Star Trek, anything scientific, if you will, science, sci-fi. It can be Star Wars, it can be Star Trek, it can be just sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's such a broad spectrum. You could create a Martian spaceship, and that's sci-fi. So it doesn't really belong to any particular group like Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever. Just space, weird, weird avatars, weird clothing, spacey.
I love what we call sci-fi because technically you can create a little 100-word story that describes an event that's going to take place tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
In fiction, and because it's in the future, it's sci-fi, so the universe is wide open here, really, isn't it? So that's great. Now, as always, with your expos, they are, we know Tangle Grid is kind of the expo grid, but it is not a grid-specific expo, is it? As always,
no, it's just one of the things we put on.
It's like a hypergrid-wide thing. So if you're on any grid, whatever your home grid, or maybe you don't even have a home grid, I don't know, wherever you are on the hypergrid, if you have something that you want to promote that's sci-fi based or
sell even, because it is glow bits. The region is glow bits, so you can put stuff in boxes and sell there as well. And because of the traffic that goes through there, you have good odds of selling stuff, or they might not see you on your own private grid, if you will.
Well, quite.
And because it's glow bits, you can use them anywhere in the metaverse that has glow bits established. Sure. So
I seem to remember talking last time, in fact, this is quite a new thing, because the original expos, there was no selling. The idea was that they were really an exhibition and a showcase of goods, whereas, of course, and that way, it's not linked to a currency on the grid or that sort of thing. But now with Globits being a universal wallet, as it were, obviously, people have the chance to sell as well.
Well, before we went Globits, we also said to them that what they could do is put a sign saying, okay, this is available on Kitely Market, or this is available in SL, or this is available on Osgrid. They could leave a message to whoever wanted the item where they could actually get it from. But now that the Globits thing is there, they don't have to go, you don't have to go chasing it. It's actually there for you to purchase if you want. If that's what you want to do, you don't have to sell things. You can just showcase as well.
Oh, of course, that's
it's just a little bit of an extra option for our, creators or showcasers, or whatever you want to call them, to show their wares. Because a lot of times, because Metaverse is so large, so big, a lot of regions get left out. And there's some really beautiful regions out there that no one has ever even touched or seen. And we also asked them to put landmarks or tell the people where their regions are, that they can see the full Monty, if you will.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
And there's nothing like an exhibit, to convey the essence of something. I mean, there are lots of places we go, wonderful places like Eld Sanctuary, you can hop over and there's gate to virtually everywhere in the hypergrid. But, all you see is a gate and the name of the grid. You don't see it until you teleport to it. And when you've got several thousand to choose from, that's not an easy thing to
and
do.
somebody gets missed.
Yeah, so if somebody has a grid or just a region or a location or a product, if they can bring it to a central place and show it off, then, as you say, they get the links to come and see the real place. And
well, we've also got an author that's put his book out. He's just starting out as a sci-fi writer, and he's got his book out on display where you can click on the pages and kind of read a little bit, and a little bit of a display about the storyline inside the book.
Right.
The objects that are in the book. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And, we've got like Third Rock is there. Kitely's got a display. Not Kitely himself, but someone from Kitely is there, and
I know the Senchai Library, or whoever. I can never pronounce them. And a couple of other things have been lined out with literature. I think Senchai Library is just readings, but they create environments that are like representative scenes from the novels. And so they read it and tell you a bit about the novel, but they create an interactive environment that you can explore that does its best to replicate what's in the novel. And that is a kind of wonderful idea. It's better than just sitting around listening to somebody recite a story in a book club, So worthy of expert too. And do you think... it seems to me the Globits thing as well, OpenSim and Hypergrid are renowned for that, the sort of sharing community, as it were. But obviously, if when you see things for sale here, you often find they're for sale on a given grid, with the exception of Kitely market, of course. And unless you're actually a resident of that grid, you don't have the right currency and stuff like that. Whereas here you can have an exhibit, and I don't know, somebody can be based on Fred Blogg's grid in the middle of nowhere grid, 8002, and never be seen, but they can, but they've got something they put a lot of work into and they actually want to sell rather than give away. And of course they can bring it to an expert like this, and because of Globits, they can sell it to anybody on any grid.
Yes.
And assuming the person buying wants to get some cash to pay with.
Well, like I said, it could be for the simple fact, like Buddy wants to promote himself as an author of sci-fi books, so he's got a display there. We've got another guy who's into the whole Star Trek thing, so he shows what he's built for a Star Trek theme. Yeah. And other ones are just kind of sci-fi / mix kind of thing. So there is a variety there of different things. And while I'm on the subject, we're also, James will be putting the link somewhere that you can take a look, but we also have a sci-fi photo contest. So, and people can go to the expo and vote on the pictures that people have submitted for the contest, and they can win up to 3 months for free region of 15,000 prims. So,
actually, no. While I remember this, is quite funny. Thursday and I were running the Hypergrid Expo. We've got a new one coming up in March. We were contacted by somebody. I forget.
L.
Yeah. Sorry.
L something, Eleanor? How do you say?
Yeah,
Eleanor.
I'm getting mistaken between the Avatar and the L. But anyway, she won your photo contest, the last one.
Oh, that's Nicole.
Yeah, that's it, Nicole. Yeah. And she had no use for the 3 months for each. She was saying,
well, wasn't that it was?
Can we give it? Can I give it away to somebody as a prize at the expo or something? And then we says, and I was sitting around saying, but we don't do anything that would have a prize. It's more of a conference than an expo.
Well, it was more that she was tied up in RL, and she didn't know if we'd be patient enough to wait for her to come back from RL.
Yeah.
And so she suggested the conference, and now she has someone from SL that's interested in taking it. It's an educational region kind of thing.
Oh,
so yeah, come on over from SL.
Yeah, exactly.
Good sim. No
good way of good way of getting people out of the old SL place and into our world, the open world.
Yeah, there is no problem with that. It was her prize to do what she will with it. So if she wants to give it away, that's totally up to her. She won it, so
yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Okay, let's move. Let's move for a while over to Tia. Yeah, the first thing that now I have to be really honest here, and although I've seen this and came across it, I have not listened to it all the way through. But you did do an interview with somebody. I guess it was a sort of TV interview in DigiWorld itself about the second city recently, didn't you, Tia?
Yes, I did. It would be King City, and he did an interview with me about Avatar Haven and a little bit about me. And he complimented the kitty that I wear around. I certainly don't have it on right now.
Very good. I think we have the address of Avatar Haven coming. I think James has a lower third display of your address there. I also have a slide here where I get I've got my camera on the slides. I'm going to move to it now. Here we are, Avatar Haven, and this slide basically is a copy of an invite that you just put up on Google+. This is a grand opening. In fact, what you opened it? Is this the day before? No, let me double check. I think it's the day before. Yes, the expo is on February the 5th, and your opening is on February the 4th. So this appears to be a grand opening of the Avatar Haven region with a costume party on February 4th. And I see you've got. Oh no, we've simply got the same time zone in Eastern and Pacific. And it's at Ebon Vale in DigiWorld. So maybe you'd like to tell us about this and kind of what Avatar Haven is.
Well, Avatar Haven, we actually have 10 regions in DigiWorld, and they call it their roleplay package. And it's our goal was to follow through on a concept I've had for a long time, was teaching roleplay and interactive fiction. Because there are a lot of misconceptions out there of what it actually is.
Yeah.
And also to follow up on a grid that I had owned at one point, Pillars of Mist, to do interactive mysteries.
Right.
So we have a mansion in the main region, and we plan on doing setting up a story and having people walk around the mansion and try and find the clues, similar to the game Clue, and try and solve the mystery of what happened to what item was stolen from the mansion.
Ah, okay, I love those things. I used to, and at the time, like going on hunts, because they were just an excuse to explore half the time rather than what was in the hunt. But I think it was Mad P and a few people did some of these amazing sort of things back in Second Life, which it's almost like walking into a participatory Agatha Christie or something, like a whodunit or what's where Cluedo style, and I kind of love those things. They're a bit more of an intellectual mystery, not too much pointing, shooting, and falling down holes kind of thing.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah,
very true. We'll also be doing teaching at the university in DigiWorld. I've been asked to teach a beginner's modeling class. And I also plan on teaching, as I said, the improv and or character development classes.
Wonderful. Let me focus on what the first thing you just said there, the modeling class. Is this modeling in general or specifically using open simulator tools?
Actually, it's modeling using a 3D package. Now, as we know, most OpenSim users use Blender.
Sure.
Okay. And that has a bit of a steep learning curve to it.
I think so.
So I will be using the trial version of AC3D. It's a very simple program, and it works very well for OpenSim. It was originally designed to work for OpenSim, or Second Life as well. And that's what I will be teaching, and they'll have the option, the knowledge that they gain from this course, they can move on to whatever software package they like, but they'll gain the basics that they need to start creating.
I think I've come across this, though for the life of me, I can't remember opening it and figuring out what's in it. The name is very familiar. I mean, obviously, you know, I mean, a few months ago, talking to you, as I said, I'd be landing in Sciencebase or something. And, you know, that's an example of a new world, which is like all mesh, wonderful lighting, stuff like that. But again, you know, if you want to build and stuff, do anything, you tend to have to work in Unity and then upload to the thing. And I thought Blender was difficult, but I think Unity probably caps them all. It's like it's more like a page makeup program for every kind of game or world you can imagine. And,
right, it's a blank slate for what you want to create, but there's a lot to it, and there's some simplicity. You can get started fairly simply, but it can advance to a level that you would definitely need to become what they call an expert game creator. Yeah.
Well, I remember in the 2D world, the organic world too, for that matter. I mean, God, it must be about 30 years ago that Tiger Mountain brought out what eventually became Photoshop under Adobe. And, you know, I was teaching that for a long while. But it was simplicity itself. You were more teaching concepts, you know, likening, masking, and things to the, you know, real world photography and art techniques. But if people had a grounding in that discipline, it was fairly easy to teach it. But then I look at it now and think, if I just stumbled across it now when I was younger and wanted to teach this, it would take me years to figure out everything in that interface. You know, it has now become so almost cluttered and clumsy. You know, you can't see the real tools for the quick tools.
There's a lot to it. Yeah, I've looked at it. There's a lot to it.
Yeah. So there's always that danger, I think, if you know, software becomes the ubiquitous software for doing something, then they want to make it better and better, and I think there's always this danger of them making it too complex. You know, Unity is a case in point, because I'm sure that I doubt if there's anybody alive who goes into Unity to use every tool in it for something. They probably go into design game levels, or design a game structure, or design a virtual world space and things like that. But because when they go into it, then they know what they want to use it for. They still have an uphill curve to learn, but of course they have to learn which tools are relevant to the thing they want to do, and which tools are just something else in the package that is of no concern to them whatsoever.
Right, it's just putting aside the things that aren't relative to your current project, and that's part of the teaching part of it, is telling people, okay, you can just ignore this for right now. You know, this is what you want to concentrate on, so you don't get overwhelmed.
Yeah. So AC3D is basically a simple package with basic tools where people, you know, understand the principles, but it's not cluttered with too many advanced tools. But
excellent.
Does it handle mesh or prims or both? Or
both, actually. It is primarily mesh. It has no animation tools, but it will transform your prims to sculpties if you want to. But of course, if you're designing in mesh, you want to use mesh.
Sure. Out of curiosity, and I say this because, as James will attest, this is forever coming up, not just on OpenSim anyway, but even in the dev meetings on OS Grid, you know, the thing, oh, well, it doesn't work because you haven't done your mesh properly. And for a long time, I know from some of the amateur stuff that I've done, that, you know, this region here is like 25 regions. Well, it's all a var file, but it's like 25 standard regions, but it's private to me. You know, I don't care where it was or not. Guests can come in, but I don't have residents, you know, so... But, you know, I find mesh, especially for terraforming, there's no terraform in these whole regions. It's all mesh landscape. You know, I find contours and shapes, and I put them all sort of together to create the, you know, the valleys and mountains and the twists and turns I want. And then I cover it with trees so that nobody can see their way, so it makes it more fun to explore. Yeah, that kind of psychology. But then I'll walk somewhere and I'll find that, you know, within the space of a month, something I could walk on is no longer walkable on because of some code change, and usually it is to do with a mesh that is a visual mesh that's been interpreted to be a collision mesh, whereas in fact the mesh I've got doesn't have a collision mesh.
Right.
So you fall into it. Now,
Right.
James will attest that, you know, there seem to be endless problems addressed to the devs about getting this mesh and that mesh to work. We were talking on the news about the Ruth 2 and Roth 2, that's the male equivalent, is that, for example. And again, the specific requirements there, but it's not always enough, is it? I mean, as well as mesh, I use sculpts for terraform shapes and stuff, and they're normally fine because they don't need a separate collision. But, you know, it's not necessarily as simple, is it, as just turning one format into another and then putting it in place. There are lots of these, you know, like if you're going to make a mesh, you really have to be able to do it in a program that makes a proper mesh with a collision mesh. You have to understand how they work together, and you have to make sure you upload both and stuff like that. So that is probably a slight obstacle for some people who just think in terms of the single object, isn't it?
Correct, yeah. Basically, you're making your mesh object. An equivalent would be making it phantom and then making a shell to hold your physics. So like putting a prim down.
Yeah. And okay, fine, let's see. I remember that over in Sane Space, you know, working with Adam, you know, obviously in Unity, I just about got to the grips with like having a mesh and then giving it an attribute for like collision mesh and textures and stuff like that. And then, you know, having just about figured it out and ready to upload it, Adam would say, well, actually, you might not want to use that as a collision mesh. You might be better to make a kind of network of invisiprims, so it's just a simple rectangle to be your collision, you know. So yeah, like for example, a settee, you know, rather than put the whole settee up as a collision mesh, which would be accurate, but it apparently has impact on processing and stuff like that.
Yes, it does.
You know, you just make a little invisiprim to be the seat of the settee, and you make another back and side to it with square prims, and because the collision mesh is invisible, nobody's going to see it as an ugly square settee, you know.
Right. A good example of that would be a column. If you've got a really elegant column in your region, all you need is just a tiny little square at the bottom to block the avatar from going through it. That's all you need. You don't have to do the whole column with a collision mesh.
Sure. I have... actually, I've got a perfect example here in one way, actually, that I've encountered building here. I mentioned I've got hills and valleys and things like that, and I cover everything with huge trees, you know, huge canopies. So if you're flying over, not that I let you fly, but you can, you can't see what's underneath. You've got to go in there and have a real look, you know, and hunt, which is great, but... you know, you get obviously you get a field of grass or something, and you really, if you look at your avatar's feet, you're not. It doesn't press down on the grass; it just floats through. They're set to phantom, and I got really annoyed with some of my big trees. That you know, nowhere in a million years do you walk through a great big tree trunk like that. You know, so I've gone all over my terrain, all over these gigantic woods, and I've probably only done a few of them, but I keep thinking I've done hundreds. I've gone to every big tree, you know, and I made an invisible prim cylinder, you know, around its trunk, so people will collide with it and will be forced to walk around the tree, because the tree itself, if I set it to non-phantom, the branches and all the additional bits coming out of it will mean people can't walk through the wood at all.
Yeah, that's true. It adds a lot of extra load.
Yeah. And if I set it to phantom, then they can walk through the trees. So here I am, you know, wandering around, duplicating my transparent cylinder and plonking around every tree base that's of any size, you know.
Well, sadly, that's what you have to do if you want collision mesh on your trees.
Yeah.
Put the little tubes down.
And it is a shame, really, because the average user, you know, it's nothing about building or whatever, which, you know, until recently, especially when I've had my own space, you know, back in the Second Life days, I never built anything. I was just 4 walls to make an office, and I was happy, you know. But the user never knows this, you know, and it's so easy. I mean, you know, I come from a design background, and, you know, I think maybe like a stage set, you know. I think of what the eye sees. So, you know, who cares if there's a cardboard backing to the wall of the room? Because it's a stage set, you know. It's going to be filmed from the painted side, not the backstage side. You know,
Exactly.
So there are those sort of mechanics, but you still think in terms of the visual effect. You know, on stage, you take shortcuts because you don't need to build a house; you just need to build and paint the interior. You know, whereas here it's almost the other way around. You've got to think of all sorts of attributes that go beyond what the viewer sees. And even what the viewer knowingly interacts with. I mean, the viewer doesn't know they're colliding with a tree and can't walk through it because I've got an invisible brim there. They just think, well, that's a proper tree. Obviously, I've got to walk around it. You know?
Yeah, it's the illusion.
Yeah. So somebody who's a user who wants to learn to build is almost at a disadvantage, because the first thing they've got to do is undo their visual take on the environment and start to understand what all the things that they see really are and the way they behave. And then they've got to come at it from that behavior point of view rather than the final aesthetic you want to, you know, put on for people to see, you know.
Yeah, one of the advice I would give anyone who wants to learn how to model is look at the game aspect of modeling. Because they do it in a very efficient manner, and that's what you want to shoot for if you're dealing with OpenSim or Second Life or Unity or Unreal. You want to model in a game aspect method.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not sure where Leslie's back, actually. She went AFK for a minute, but if you're back,
I'm here.
Oh, wonderful, right. Yeah, I saw your little missus saying AFK pee break or something. Right.
Hey, don't tell everybody.
Come on, we all do it.
Oh my
That
goodness.
it is the magic of a virtual world, isn't it? You don't,
You, Mel.
okay, I apologize.
Too late now. The cat's out of the bag, man.
Yeah, too liberal with my flow of words there, really, isn't it? Okay, we all do it. Right, the beauty of virtual worlds, you see, the avatar stays put whilst, yes, you know what. Right, okay.
Oh, do it again. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, Leslie, if you have any interest or indeed experience in building, and or more specifically, as Tia calls it, modelling. You know, obviously you own our grid, so you've got builders, creators, and all sorts of people in that grid. Have you ever done any of it yourself in that sense, you know, the realising the material of the world other than like just hosting the grid? Are you into that or used to it at all?
Well, they tell me I'm a pretty good builder, but no, I'm not a mesh person. Don't have a clue. The tools are way out of my league. Like you're saying, you need something small and simple. You don't need 15,000 buttons, and you're going, okay.
Yeah, you need
get this, man. I'm too old to learn this stuff. This is like 2 or 3 years of university to learn this stuff. Jeez, my goodness. No. I
sounds
enrolled
like-
in Prim still, so
It sounds like me. When this program's over, or probably tomorrow morning, in fact, I will go and check out.
yeah, I'm gonna do that too. If it's simple, I'm gonna
ACCG.
try it. Yeah, I'm gonna
exactly.
try it.
If it's manageable, I'll have a go. If I can understand it, I probably won't be able to resist. But at the moment,
Yeah, things
No,
like Blender and the other one, no way.
Well, it's push, pull, and manipulate. That's it in a nutshell.
well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
And then decide on your export parameters, no doubt, with 100 boxes as to what weight of the polygons and.
Yeah, that's true. It does export very nicely to day format. So it's, like I said, it's very friendly to OpenSimRes Second Life.
Does it handle avatars?
Yes, you can import. As a matter of fact, they have them. They have the avatars, the standard avatars now, not the new ones, in the format especially for AC3D and its native format. So you could pop them in there and make your accessories or your clothes right on the avatar.
Right. The reason I ask, again, this show isn't about me, it's about you lot, but I mean, it's a relevant point probably. I have, well, actually, you will know this, Tia. I have a mesh avatar that Joey Obama created for me in Sciencespace.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, he's actually lurking behind the stage here as well, but it's simply a statue. Now, when I'm not doing the show, I actually wear him here. So I've got the same avatar in Sciencespace as I have in OpenSim here. The problem is, and this was under my instructions, as it were. I was screen sharing when Joey made the basic one for me. To get the look I wanted. It means my clothes are part of the avatar, so I can't wear costumes. I wear a hat and a beard on top of the mesh, but it's a single mesh, right? And another chap, Marcus Llewellyn, in fact, actually, before I was able to use it in here, he had to do something to it, rig it, I think is the expression, isn't it? And
yes, that's correct.
He sort of rigged it. So when I see myself wearing it in here, I'm simply wearing an object called Malbone's Mesh. It's a one piece. But in fact, the file for it contains like an alpha layer and a texture layer. It contains different bits, which I've opened as images, And it's a bit disconcerting because where my eyes are, there are two great big holes in what I presume is some kind of alpha. So there's a gap there, but there is some mesh eyeballs underneath there that are sunken into the skull, that they're not resting on the sockets, they're inside the skull. Although they do seem to work a bit like the Second Life model of Avatar, where the eyes move and stuff like that. But my mouth is solid and it's closed. So unlike this prim version I'm wearing here, where my mouth responds to my lip movements, my mesh avatar's mouth doesn't move. That's actually the only reason it's still holding me back from using it as my broadcast avatar.
Yeah, understood.
I can't get my mouse to work. So I was actually looking at the components of this, and rather than going begging to somebody who knows what they're doing, is very busy, I wondered if I could fix this myself by taking the DAE file, the mesh that I've got made, either the one that's been rigged or the one that hasn't, and somehow exporting it into hopefully a simple program that can understand what it is and allow me to punch a hole in the mouth, if you see what I mean. So there's a hole that will show through to my standard avatar's lips moving.
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
Yeah, because when I look at the alpha channel, all I can see two black holes in the eye sockets, but no hole in the mouth. So I'm sort of thinking, I wonder if there's a way I can export it and tweak it myself, because I don't need a fully sculpted mouth. I just need a hole in the alpha that will show through to my teeth and lip movements. So basically, I don't punch an actual hole. I would probably punch a mask that follows the contours of my lips. So everything else will be solid and unmoving, but the lips themselves will move, and they will show teeth when they do move. And that's probably all it needs to fool people that I'm talking. well, as much as you could fool people.
You got teeth?
Well, we won't go into that. I have a dentist.
Next thing
Okay.
you know, you'll see Mel's false teeth playing up front of the stage here or something.
Oh no, that'll make us run away. Oh,
My avatar.
I think you punched the hole too big, Mel, because your teeth are on the ground.
my avatar, and it's this avatar has teeth. That's for the mesh one. I can't tell you because I've never been able to open the mouth. Great. Can you imagine if this was done by motion control?
yeah, it's basically an animation. They
Are
create the
the-
jaw separately and then animate it.
Yeah, and like, you know, you open your mouth with the motion capture thing, you know, say, well, you know, in real life, there's no teeth. Well, no, there are. But the avatar's got plenty of them. I know why. You're funny old world. Yeah, sure. So, yeah, well, the reason I was asking was that's a perfect example, you know, and as somebody who really isn't that much beyond the user, wants to know, you know, the tool that would enable me to do something very simple like that. Like Leslie, I don't want to, you know, get into the complexity of building, you know, the uphill curve of learning software at my age, you know. I just want to be able to do some simple things and get somebody else to help me with the complicated things, you know. I just go, but surely I should be able to do this. The basics are done, you know. So, you know, maybe, I guess this is the AC/DC. Now, where am I going? I'm going to say AC. AC.
That's the band.
Mel's been thunderstruck.
Yeah. Very nice one, Leslie. That's
Well done.
AC3D.
AC3D, yeah, by Invisiprim.
By Invisiprim. I really have to check this one out. James, have you come across this one by any chance? I know you get your hands on all sorts of things.
I've not seen it before, but I'm browsing the web page. It looks really interesting. I'd really like to try it. And I'm curious. I really don't understand all the different mesh formats, and you know, I've been doing some things in VR chat with the headset, and so it'd be fun to see if I could do a similar avatar in both locations.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And there are other complications too. You know, this same avatar, which is great that it looks the same in Science Space as it does here when it doesn't need its lips moving. But I uploaded it in high fidelity. And again, all I've ended up with is a statue. I can't wear it. I can't figure out what to do with it. And it's not the same as rigging it like it was rigged for Second Life. You know, I've tried that one. I have no idea. All I have is a room in a sandbox in high fidelity, and there's the statue of the avatar waiting to be used.
Probably a totally different skeleton system there for
I think it's
yeah.
FBX or something like that, I think.
Oh, that's a standard format for games.
Yeah. The mystery is I can get it in okay, but how do I wear it? It just doesn't seem to be any combination possible to just make it my avatar. I think Chris or Philip or somebody was sorting that out for me, but as you know, it's like Adam building a studio in Science Space. Good intentions, you know, but busy people are busy people, and it doesn't always happen. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on now. I know you when you quit your kind of more or less, I guess it's part-time job with Science Space, you came back here to open Sim here. Yeah, it's an amicable passing and everything else, so you're still in touch and get on with the Rowan and
yeah, absolutely
like that. But what was your impulse there? What brought you back to OpenSim specifically as a platform?
Specifically, well, this is where it happened with Andress Renault. She is my main character, and she is the one that I got the OpenSim rep with because I did a lot of training for helping new grids get started and things like that. And this is where I know people, and I'm good at it. So I came back to familiar grounds.
Sure. You know, that's I can really just totally understand that, because although I love science space and I love some things about high fidelity, you know, science space is close to being, you know, usable professional platform and publicly accessible and on the web, but even better. But high fidelity very much still feels like beta. Sansar is totally unusable in my opinion, and I can't handle VR chat without the helmet, I'm afraid. And also, to me, the killer app here on OpenSim is the Hypergrid, because unlike proprietary platforms, you actually have, they're not protocols, in other words, they won't work across different platforms, but at least with OpenSim and similar platforms, it connects them all together. I mean, there are exceptions like Inworlds, which could at one time have been on the Hypergrid, but chose not to be, and has evolved beyond the point of compatibility for the moment.
Yeah, they can't roll back. No.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
the rollback thing. But basically, for the main gist of the vanilla core OpenSim, and even other things like ArebaSim and various other strands, should we say, not to mention the work that people like Terry at DigiWorlds do to tweak the code for their own particular grids. Like Terry runs DigiWorlds, but also Great Canada Grid, I think Third Rock, you know, on the tech side. So he will implement particular tweaks and things for that, but it doesn't affect the core operability, the interoperability that makes the Hypergrid what it is, you know. So there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Hypergrid connected destinations. And I think that's a wonderful thing, because technically, I mean, it depends how you view it. There's nothing like the population here now that a closed world like Second Life, which is almost a game these days, has. But we have greater landmass now than Second Life has, because of that interconnectivity that represents our whole hypergrid. There's no grid out here that's as big as Second Life, but all of them together have more landmass than something like Second Life. And to me, that is the future. It's like, if it's a web address, you know, who cares what country it's in, where the server is, where even the web server may be in Australia, but the web page that's on that server may be in Canada.
And you host anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just able to go to any location you have the address of, and the 3D spaces of the future, right? Because at the end of the day, it's turning pages into spaces, isn't it? When we're online, that gives us more, empowers us to a greater extent when we're in a space than we are when we're reading or looking at the page, even if it's bouncing video, you know. We don't have the protocols that make the web that allow different, imagine you got a world built in Unity, another world that's built in Flash, and I don't know, a world built in something else, Microsoft Silverlight or something, if that was what it was. And these things can rest on web pages, and because you got to them through web pages, you don't really care, because the addressing system uses the web. But as far as virtual worlds as standalone entities and a standalone viewer are concerned, we don't have those protocols in place. We can open Firestorm, we can go to Second Life with it, or we can open another version and go into OpenSim with it, and we can hypergrid around. But we can't. But the viewer itself has no capacity to understand any protocols other than the standard ones of things like Internet Labs and OpenSim. I couldn't suddenly teleport into Science Space into a Unity-based world using over the hypergrid. On the other hand, unless I did it by simply opening a web version of Sciencebase, if you see what I mean, which is a kind of plus point there. In fact, one of the things I was disappointed with is I tried to put Sciencebase's web version on as media on a prim in World here. And I couldn't get it to work for love of money, basically. And the trouble with media on the prim is it's a one-to-one thing where you click on it and you log in. It isn't seen by other users when it's on the prim, unless they do their own separate login, like a shared Google Drive space or Google Docs But it would still have its uses because, for example, if I was filming and let's say I wanted to interview Adam in Sciencebase, being able to get James to click on the prim and log into Sciencebase and have Adam on camera on a wall with us here sitting talking to him, if you see what I mean, that would be something
Like
that it would be a virtual blending of the conference call. You know, I'd have Sciencebas's environment on one side of the set with Adam in it and the people talking to him on the other side of the set. Philip's done that in High Fidelity, where he's addressed he chickens out to go into the real world. You know, people ask him to give a presentation. He doesn't want to go out. You know, he doesn't want to go out. So he tells them to log into High Fidelity, and then he sends a web camera over to the place, and they merge the two. You know, without him having to budge. You know, and it works great because he can see the audience in front of him coming in. You know, with high definition detail. They can see him as an avatar on the stage, totally in front of them, and you know, it is bridging that conference call with the virtual world sort of thing. It has a virtual feel, even though the technique is that of a mixed reality conference call. So, you know, I was looking forward, you know, I'm the first to jump at, I think that way, you know, I'm the first to, okay, these are two separate platforms. I can't jump from one to the other. So how can I get around it? You know, and then I come up with things like that. And, you know, hopefully the web version of Sciencebase will actually work on the Premiere soon, and I could use that trick if I wanted to.
Yeah, do you guys cover that new European law that's coming out? Privacy Act?
Oh, you know, I don't even know where I stand at the moment. Because until a year ago, I was a European, and now I'm a Brit, but not a European, technically.
Well,
and so Britain is kind of exempt from some European stuff, or will be in a couple of years, and on the other hand, we're going to keep some of it. So there seems to be a lot of privacy. I mean, Google and Facebook's are having a hell of a time in Europe with European legislators. And I'm not sure I disapprove. I mean, you know, sort of what they can get away with in this sort of maverick America, you know.
Well, the problem will be us Europeans, because I live in Holland, will not be able to go to SL or anywhere else. It's not going to be putting up those blocks, those privacy blocks where email address, IP address. There's a couple other things that will not be allowed to be displayed in the database. And let me tell you right now, OpenSIM, as far as I know, okay, because I'm not a dev, can't be done.
Well, this grid here, right? The address of this grid here is really my IP address, right? Followed by the and it's port 80 or 8002. Right, and my router then sends port 80 to the actual machine my server is running on. Yeah, it's as simple as that. For me to get in and out, I have to create a loop back so that I can loop back into my system. But when you read metaworld.outworlds.net 8002, that's like a phantom proxy that simply takes you to my personal IP address in my house. Right now, you know, you can't just jump into it. You've got to be hypergridding in, and you can only come in on port 8002, and you can only get into the machine that is set up to receive 8002. Yeah, and there's firewalls running and stuff like that. So it's pretty darn secure, as it, you know, it had to be if I was going to risk running it on my desktop, you know, with other things running. But it's essential to the communications protocol that the network system knows my IP address. It's the same with something like High Fidelity, because High Fidelity has a server component, and when you click home in High Fidelity, you're actually leapfrogging back to a sandbox which is in your own computer on your own IP address. And
well, see, they're supposed to encrypt that. That's the new law. Everything that has to do with personal information has to be encrypted.
Oh, it can still
be email, IP, there's another one that affects the database of OpenSIM.
It's I don't know.
OpenSIM doesn't have that capability, as far as I know.
I see what you mean, because technically, encryption is good and should help because to protect the data. But you know, it's like having a key. You know, if it's encrypted, you go somewhere, you need to have your key to open the door to open that connection. And if it's encrypted properly, but the lock understands the key, then it should be no problem at all. The problem happens when you go along with the key that doesn't contain the decryption software, and then you can't get through. So the encryption itself is a good thing. The better the encryption, the better. But not so much that the door can't be opened where it's needed to be opened. That's
there's a certain point that you can, as a grid. I'm talking about as a grid. I'm not talking about someone's private little PC, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
For me, for example, or DigiWorlds or someone like that. Certain things can be encrypted. That's fine. But the database draws information, and if it can't read it because it's encrypted,
right,
then you don't get in. Because the database doesn't see you. It can't. Because it's looking for a special number or whatever. This is OpenSIM I'm talking about here, software, that cannot draw that information.
So basically, OpenSIM is working on the principle of everything being an open door rather than a shut door that needs a key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got a problem, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think, in no certain terms.
Well, you think, devs know this is coming. And it doesn't matter if the grid's in USA. If they don't have a protection of someone from Europe coming into their grid, they don't get in. So all your Europeans are left standing out in the cold. Do you know how many that's going to be? In the thousands, literally.
And ironically, it'd be the other way around too. The Americans who haven't got the encryption and are probably more vulnerable won't be able to get into Europe because Europe is encrypted. So it works both ways.
Could be. I never looked at it that way because I'm sitting in Europe, and I'd say 75% of my members are European.
Yeah. But if
there was a little part there that said that if we basically, to get around that, now I'm just reading from what little bits that I read in the Hyper Business News, that if I put, when they're signing up, when you register to become an avatar, you have to have another line there that says, do you accept the fact that we're going to have your IP address and your email?
Yeah.
That's the only way around it. And on the back side of it, we have to be able to give them the option to pull it at any time.
Yeah.
But as soon as they do that, then they better realize that they're no longer in the grid.
Sure.
See what I'm saying? Because they give us permission to use their email address and IP address or whatever the information that we do need for them to go into that database or register in that database as a European person.
I'm with you entirely. What you'd really need...
the back office has to go reverse it.
I mean, I'm thinking of something like Second Life in the old days, or now maybe too, Linden Labs, they used to come a few times to conferences over here, and I think it was in the rain where Philip had left for the first time, and was it Mark Kingdon? I think it was Mark Kingdon had taken over, and they were pushing this sort of enterprise thing for Second Life, and actually what they were pushing was not like a special viewer, it was actually a Blade server, whereas they were serving Second Life pre-installed on a Blade server that you could put in, corporates could put into a server rack, and they had a special edition of the marketplace where they could buy things off Linden's. Of course, they just want to sell all the stuff for it. Basically it was a farce because, the companies would be paying out, but, all they had was local control and firewalls. But at the time, Linden Labs were operating servers here in Britain and in Holland and in Singapore. Whereas now they're all back in Silicon Valley, right? So when you log in to Second Life from Britain, right, you're going straight over to servers in Silicon Valley and logging into the master server that connects up to all the other servers running the grid, right? For a time, when I was in Britain, I would have been logging into a server in Britain that was connected then to the global Second Life network, and they obviously had to balance out the protocols between different geographic territories themselves. Now it's all shifted back internal to America, internal to Linden Labs. So, I think all the server farm is in the same place nowadays. So this will presumably even major commercial things like Second Life would be affected by this, because they may be very precious about their walled garden, but I'm pretty sure those walls don't have all the requirements for that European
I don't
privacy.
So. It's just like extreme, but opens just my 2 cents. Let's make that clear so we get no bad stuff coming on YouTube after. I'm hoping that OpenSim will take this seriously, because nobody wants to get a fine of 200,000 euros. I don't care who you are. And it doesn't matter if you're a small grid, a little teeny 2-person grid. As far as I understand, it's everybody.
Yeah, it's privacy. Look, I've for a long time I have speculated that that probably the word privacy won't even be in our dictionaries in 20 or 30 years' time. But that doesn't mean the notion of things like confidentiality won't remain. Because if you have a world system, is open and communication is open and crosses geographic boundaries and stuff like that. The last thing I want to see is operations like this that are actually closing the walls again and sort of defeating the internet for what it was, by territorializing it. We've already got it with movies and stuff. You can't, you're in one country, it's the corporate and the, geopolitical bigwigs are just creating new walls in the networks. And I kind of don't really see the need for privacy. What I see the need for is confidentiality. It's like people talking about spying on you through webcams. Well, it's possible, but it's unlikely. And when you're dealing with data, it's like looking for needles in haystacks. How great your sifting engines are and everything like that. Even if that data could be sifted to spy on you individually, there aren't enough. It's like you've got to have half the population being the spies, the humans monitoring the data, to the other enslaved half of the race. In practical terms, your privacy can technically be invaded, but in any tangible sense, it is not being, or unless you were targeted by, I don't know, intelligence services or something, and they upflagged you so that you really were under surveillance.
Oh, they were. I guess they say they're worried. Yeah, but they say they're worried about people hacking and getting your personal information.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about your modems, but mine can have an auto reset or change the IP address every so often.
Yeah,
and I don't understand what the problem is. And the emails are all Gmail, Google.
I think everything that communicates in and out of my computer is actually encrypted in some form, except for the open port for the server, and even that goes through 2 firewalls. They're sort of alerted to, pick up things that shouldn't be coming through that port, basically. But just because I've lost privacy and could be spied upon doesn't mean I'm going to be, unless there's really good cause. But more so importantly, when this data flow goes back and forth, I expect confidentiality. For example, if in 10 years' time, my health is such that I need my blood or heart or something monitored, and that data is being fed to my local health provider, you know. That data I will be sending to them openly, and it won't be private because it goes back and forth between them, but it will be encrypted and therefore I should imagine totally confidential between me and the health provider, or maybe they're the people, the contractors they work with. In other words, it is useful to me, and I'm not concerned about privacy because what I'm trading in return is a lot of benefit, you know, and it's still confidential. What I don't like are the Facebooks of the world who just are grabbing information.
Google does the same.
And are making no commitments about what they'll do with it. They'll do, you know, legal or illegal things with it, and, you know, it's up to you to prove it. You know,
yeah, well, Google does the same. It's all the time. Can we find out where you live? No. You know where I live because every time I open my Google, it comes to the Netherlands page. No matter if I put com in there or not, it automatically shoots me to Netherlands.
Yeah, well, most of them, if you've got a mobile phone, then you've probably connected to Google on your mobile phone, so they have location tracking on your account.
Oh, they got all kinds of
they don't
on.
just know where you live, which is where you maybe make most of your calls from. They know where you are on a satellite when you're in the street making calls. That's, you know, the privacy there has gone. But I don't expect to see online somewhere a map that breaches the confidentiality and actually allows any member of the public to find me and where I'm walking in the street.
Well, I'm just worried because this new law comes in May, and we do know how slow OpenSim is sometimes about upgrading things.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen. We're really going to have to wait and see. We're going to put on our sign-ups, you know, you have to check here before you read the TOS, for one, and the second check mark will be, do you understand that will be this and that and the other thing, and then our back office will be putting, you know, you can unsubscribe to this for your privacy, blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
But as soon as that happens, though, they're toast in the grid. I'm sorry, but I don't know about you, but I don't have 200,000 in my back pocket.
Actually, I don't just... Well, we got here. I'd like to ask Tia something there if she knows the answer, but I think she probably will. As far as I know, with SciSpace, a totally different platform again, right? But again, it's down to connectivity. As far as I know, Rowan and SciSpace's servers are all based in the UK, even though Adam is doing admin from Australia.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Anything European.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you know, presumably so something like SciSpace could be affected by this too.
Everybody.
I don't actually know where SciSpace's principal servers are. Do you, Tia?
It makes well. Never mind. It's if you or me try to log into SL as a European person, they have to be able to encrypt our email, our IP, and there's one other one. You'll have to read the Hyper Business News what the actual regulations are about it, but it doesn't matter. If they don't do it and we get in, they can't be fined. Even if their servers are sitting in America, Australia, Timbuktu, it doesn't matter. As long as it's a European trying to get in.
I think I'll have to try and hijack Maria to come back on this show strictly as a guest, just to let me know, can't give me more data on all this, because obviously
it's a big problem.
That's probably a good idea.
Maria's
give more direct information.
I'm keeping my eye on my end. Keep my eye on my end because it'll be a big news story. Obviously,
it will. Yeah. Maria's day job actually is all that security data stuff, you know, completely separate from Virtual World. So, yeah, she would.
It might not hurt because I know that when that HB News story was released, I can just feel people sweating.
When was the story released? As you saw it?
Just a couple of weeks ago.
When buried in the New Year quiet kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, let me dig it up for you. You guys keep talking, I'll dig it up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think I'll toss it people watching, actually, if anybody knows about this or thinks it's something they can talk about, do let us know. I think this, you know, it's very easy to concern ourselves with what's going on in, say, an environment or in the kind of networks. But, you know, when things creep up in the real world that could literally affect this, you know, the whole global platform that we are actually using, you know, that would isolate geopolitical regions. So whether it's disguised as privacy concerns or whatever, you know, it's something we have to be alert to. You know, there's a line there somewhere, and we have to know what it is. What can the corporations and security services cross, and what they can't? And you know, we have to know kind of where that is, and if it's obstructing our ability to interact and communicate with people, which is principally, at the end of the day, what virtual worlds are all about. Then you know, we have to certainly follow up that. Okay, I'm opening the it was actually David Karuki at Hypergrid Business who wrote the post on January the 10th. I think I missed this one. There's something wrong with Hypergrid Business's feeds at the moment. Okay, you can find the information about this. Actually, I suspect James may be able to copy and paste the link from Skype into our lower third. But if he can't, you want to go to Hypergrid Business, January 10th, and the post called Grids Preparing for EU General Data Protection Regulation. Basically, is the name of the page, or the title of the blog is, Does Your Grid Prepare?
As high as 20 million euros. Lovely. Or 4% of your annual revenue. Oh, yeah. Get right on that.
I'm not sure. I don't think I want to read that now. The whole topic is going to completely hijack this show. Worrying indeed. So yeah,
you may want to do one show just on this, and maybe there's someone out there that's knowledgeable about it. They can walk us grid owners through it. This because it's coming. So, and maybe a guest from OpenSim's side to tell us what they're going to do about this database problem or issue, because it can't be done. It just, database isn't written that way. So how do we fix the problem as a grid owner?
I don't think I can't reply to that. I doubt if James or Tia can. I think we're flummoxed on this one right now.
No, what I'm just saying is maybe the financial side of it, and a dev or whoever.
Yeah.
Maybe Terry or somebody has some knowledge or whatever, extreme knowledge of OpenSim, if you will, to sit down and explain to those grid owners what's going to happen.
My bet is, that people in Europe will possibly know a bit about it and be confused. Typically, people in America who probably don't think it affects them will probably not. It will indirectly, because they'll lose European customers. But yeah, you know, basically, if is all this seems there, but
they would have to block all IP addresses coming from the European side of the water.
Yeah. Very, very sneaky, dark stuff, really, in my opinion.
I wasn't sure if you knew about this, because you mentioned it, but I thought that was pretty important.
No, yeah, I didn't. That particular article and that particular impact, I certainly hadn't thought about. You know, I am familiar with a lot of legislation going through Europe, and I never know whether it applies to Britain or not anymore. But you know, that is, you know, giving people like Google and Facebook a hard time. And in many ways, I support that, because they will take liberties if they're not, you know, cautioned and told where the line is. But, you know, where the line is,
exactly.
That, you know, needs to be decided using some kind of barometer for the modern world, you know. You can't just ruthlessly use medieval descriptions of, right, the wall's going to be there. You know, it will affect everybody, because the wall will keep two sides apart, so to speak. But you know, an open world building more and more walls is not my idea of where we should be going. But
this would be a real kick in the pants, that's for sure.
Tia, coming to reality.
Huh? What? Yeah.
Yeah. does this stuff concern you? Have you got any thoughts on this particular thing, or would you rather forget about it like most people?
Well, honestly, I can't say anything about it because I don't know that much about it, so it would be unfair of me to say anything. So.
Sure. Yeah, we can't comment. There's, well, sadly, I think it's something that probably concerns us all when we're told it's happening, but in many ways, a lot of the world will ultimately find out too late, on the day it happens, Ooh,
Well, they say May.
What just happened? Yeah.
That only gives us 2 months to turn around.
Indeed.
And you know, like I said, how slow OpenSim can be, and they're not about to change their whole database structure just for this right overnight. They won't do it.
James, any thoughts on this? I'm not saying you've got any answers or expertise, just thoughts.
No. Well, I'm reading the link that Leslie shared, and my only thought is that commerce drives everything, and if this would impinge on commerce of Amazon and other vendors, there's going to be some way around it. I mean, a key of this law, the GDPR, is the right for people to delete their information.
Yeah.
And the irony of that is that, well, you need to track them to know that you can delete their data. So it's
hence the button that I was telling you about, where they check it. Yes, we accept that you get this information from us, and then on the back office, check it to get rid of it.
Yeah,
that's what they said in the article.
Yep.
But the problem is the databases don't do that.
Yeah, I know. In a particular, I know in the particular case about the right to have information deleted. I personally have mixed feelings about this because, if you have a tattoo you got at an early age, right? Yeah, I suppose these days it can be removed, but traditionally you live with it. If you're stupid enough to post something on Facebook that is going to be detrimental to you in later life, then you really have to justify it and live with it as history. And Facebook was certainly told that they have to remove from a person's history, under European law, anything they want removed. But Facebook will say they've complied with that, but there've been endless stories of the fact they haven't complied because people have still been able to find information that Facebook says is deleted. And I think this is probably coming close to the point that, quite frankly, it's not as easy to delete something, especially on the web, where people may have.
They say if it's on the web, it stays on the web.
Yeah, but that's the way it's always worked. I mean, the idea is it's a permanent archive originally. Mm-hmm. So you will put something on the web, and maybe it becomes outdated, and somebody publishes something else that's more up to date and proves the folly of what you published. But the archives of human discussion and human progress are there. If you use the web, you are contributing to that archive, and you can't expect the whole bloody World Wide Web to scan itself to delete all references to something you mentioned once upon a time that you now regret. Tough, the moment you hit the send button on an email, it's the same. If you really aren't sure, you don't post. And I'm afraid, I tend to side with the keep it up principle there, because I've got stuff on the web that when I was first, I think in the 1990s, this early 1990s, I wasn't quite actually. It's probably most embarrassing as a design job rather than actual information. But I put stuff up on the web which I rather wish I hadn't now, because I didn't quite know what I was doing. Neither does anybody when they do their first websites and things, But I can't. It is there. The server that hosted it is no longer there, but there are mirror copies all over the place, I've found. It will never go away. And I believe that it shouldn't. I believe that, if there's fault anywhere, it's the fact that I didn't fully consider the implications of making sure it was all perfect before I did it.
How we know it's perfect, because that as far as you were concerned back then, it was perfect.
Yeah, it was great. Gosh, golly, look what I've done.
Yeah, exactly.
20 years later, 30 years later,
What
going all red,
is that?
face. Is that me? I read an interview with me in a collection of old magazines I got, basically. And it was an interview I had done, explaining my thoughts on, I don't know, things like economy and the state of the economy. Anyway, this is back in the early 70s. When I was young. I couldn't have been barely out of my teens. And actually, it wasn't as bad, nearly as bad as I thought. But I thought, who is that voice? What the fuck does he think he's talking about? Because I was naive and stuff. Now, that was before the web. I mean, this is just a printed article in an old magazine I've got and I've never scanned into the archives, on the shelves. But in principle, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
Elsewhere, there must be other, dusty copies of that magazine buried in people's attics or stuff that if they dug them up and found it, who was this guy talking about? Yeah, but it was actually quite, in an innocent way, it was all quite plausible to the mindset and what we thought we knew about the world in the 1970s. The fact that information has come out later, which means that we no longer view it the same way, and the fact that we are older and more experienced, so we would tend to view it differently as well. Tough. Hey, that's me as a kid talking nonsense. Live with it. Anyway, I digress. A lot of his issues involved here. Okay, let's get back to the hypergrid, where for the moment, at least, for the next 2 months, we're all at home jumping around. I hope. What is happening? We obviously have the Sci-Fi Expo coming up in Tangle Grid. We've obviously got your launch event coming up in DigiWorld's Tia. From your own perspectives, anything else exciting happening at the moment?
Well, actually, in March, Digi is having their anniversary as well. I do not know the info. Yes, the information's actually out there now. It's up on the Google Plus pages.
Right. So there'll be, what anniversary would that be? 5 years, probably?
I'd have to peek again.
No.
Yes, I know.
It's the same, about the same age as Great Canadian Grid is.
Yeah.
They came out about the same time, so.
Third Rock was the first, and then Great Canadian, and then DigiWorld itself. As that little group under Terry is what I'm thinking, really.
Yeah, Third Rock is old, though. Third Rock's got to be at least 8 years old, if not more.
Yeah. DigiWorld was because DigiWorld really only came about when
after Great Canadian Grid.
Well, DigiWorld was originally the provider for the other grids and the tech support. And it was only after a change at DigiWorld that it was able to become an actual grid of its own, as well as being a service agency for the other grids. And that was a bit controversial at the time, because it was like, which hat are you wearing tonight kind of thing. But, but it's stabilized, it's sort of, they basically, they, as a rule, then I don't think they're seen as competing with their own customers, which was really what the issue was. But Terry does a wonderful job too. Not just with DigiWorld, but with Great Canadian Grid and Third Rock. He's always been a very he's always run. I don't know. He's always seems to run a very robust system. When things go wrong, it is fixed before you know it. It's not. There's no like OpenSim OS grid type outages that last for months or.
Yeah, the staff over there is pretty top notch. I have to give them credit for that.
Well, I shall have to give Terry a ping and maybe get him on there. I haven't got him. He was on a lot of earlier editions of this show because he's a very great promoter for VirtualWorlds in general. But I think since he launched DigiWorlds itself, of course, he's become considerably busier.
He's had a lot of grids hook up to him now since this last year.
Yes, exactly. It's become quite extensive.
Enterprise. Yep.
How about the future on Tangle Grid, Leslie? Have you thought beyond the Sci-Fi Expo, yes, as to what will be following that? You know, they're still more or less quarterly, aren't they?
Well, we've been doing it now, what, almost 5 years?
Yeah.
4 or 5 times, 6 times a year?
You'll be having an expo anniversary soon, regardless of which expo it is. Yeah, oh, it's our 100th expo or something.
Well, we still have some shops left for free over on Globitville. So if anybody wants to, you know, put their wares in there, it is Globit enabled. It's right next door to the expo, so you get the traffic coming off there as well.
Oh, so, right.
So side by each.
That is, presumably, it's a free shop on the criteria that you are selling with Globits.
Yeah.
Project with Globits, yeah.
Because the rest of the grid is still its own currency.
Right.
But we wanted to try it out and see how it goes. And
I had a very peculiar thing happen on it. Was I was saying this off backstage, although it doesn't all work here, to James last week, I think. One of our Habagus 5 events went to, I think it's Sarto's farm. A chap called Sarto has this wonderful interactive farm where you don't just have breedable animals, but you know, you don't buy feed for them. You actually have to go to the woods and cut down wood and carry the wood and then build a fire and then start the fire and then mix ingredients into a cooking pot and make the slop for the different animals. And you know, it's not, it's breedables with a hard work twist, you know. And it's all magnificently scripted, and it was comparatively lag free once we actually got there.
But let's face it, you got 25 avatars dropping down. It's not going to be exactly, I don't care what grid you're on.
Yeah, well, I think we were more. Wow. It was actually a heavily subscribed Safari. I think it was more like 40 getting on for 50 that week. So, I forgot what made me think of that now, but it was something to do with that. Oh, dear me. You can't afford to be a broadcaster with a wandering mind, can you? I can't.
The interaction of the growing the food and stuff. No.
Yeah, no. It's just I was trying to think what relevance that particular visit had to something.
Well, there are several farms starting up on DigiWorlds too. We visited one a couple weeks ago, and she says, "I got to get back to my farm."
Actually, this whole farm that Sarta somebody's done, you can actually get it from it for free in a res box. And the res box actually contains individual res boxes for resing, you know, all endless variety of animal types and stuff like that. So there are res boxes for resing the animals and NPCs that will make up the farm. But the build of the farm is what comes in the initial res box. But it was the same with like the seating arrangements on my chairs here. The scripts were clearly not behaving as they do on that particular grid. So
where'd you get those from?
I'd have to dig up the Earl. If you the only place I can think I've got it. Oh, hang on, I will while we're talking, somebody talk over me. I will actually endeavour to find it, because I will have the location presumably in my suitcase under my sort of weekly Safari links. So Crianoval Grid, Art of Puzzles, Big Boy Fishing Game. What on earth was that? Senior Surprise Chat. Oh, that was this week. I think it's a Crianoval Grid, Creanovale grid, and a region called HG Novale, Novale.
You want to type that in Skype there, buds?
No, because this is something I've followed in World. Hang on a second, I know what I might be able to do.
Or hand me the landmark or whatever.
Oh, hang on, and I think I may be wrong. destination to. Yeah, this is something else. This is something else.
Did you hear the Genesis grid closed down?
Yes, I think I had that somewhere. It's funny, there are grids, Art of Puzzles, Big Boy Fishing Game. I'm sorry, I can't find a link for it actually. The one I almost thought I found there was the wrong one.
You can send it to me.
It may have been 4 weeks. Yeah, I shall dig it up and be able to find it for you somewhere. I've got the box. So, well,
perm, you can toss it to me.
Yeah, I was just thinking actually, if I go to recent and my games and go to objects, and where do we go? I shouldn't be doing this. So show filters. It's like I'm giving a tutorial telling people what I'm doing. I will have a quick look here. Older than older than 8 days, definitely.
But what's new with you, James? Anything you found out on your little excursions?
Well, doing the VR chat, has been really fascinating. I haven't met many people in VR chat yet, but just the experience with the headset is pretty fun.
Something like that on my head all the time would make me crazy.
Yeah, we had even Jason he doesn't wear that much. It's a sort of a session. It's kind of a session thing rather than in front of the computer. But we were just talking on the news program about what I really think was a major story in VR chat. Some person had a seizure in real life. And of course, they were connected not only in their headset, but with tactile stuff on their body. The whole works. Mm-hmm. And the whole seizure and the convulsions were visible to everybody else in the VR chat room. We were actually talking about, for some it was kind of voyeurism. They thought, oh, somebody's putting on a performance. And then for others, they realized what was going on and were possibly wondering, do we know the real world contact for this person to call the hospital?
I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Somebody had a seizure.
And of course, you think of somewhere like here or Second Life, and although, there are plenty of instances where somebody's got ill and told their friend, or they've been talking and somebody's thought they're suicidal and has looked them up and, tried to do something in their real life back channels. If I was having a seizure right now, you wouldn't know it from my avatar. Whereas in VR chat, you do, because it's some people aren't just wearing a headset, they're wearing gloves and, maybe that body skin suit or whatever. Potentially they could be, literally armored with flexible stuff on their body that tells you everything you need to know about them. And clearly this was the case with this chap, The real shame is the cartoony look of most of the VR chat avatars, They must have looked very peculiar having convulsions. And apparently the guy recovered and he let everybody know all was fine. And apparently it said that the most uncanny, the uncanny moment was coming back to consciousness in real life and still being in VR. You're waking up, you're coming out of like this convulsion, and you look around and you've got short-term memory loss, and you look around you to figure out where you are, and instead of seeing the floor of your flat or something, they were in VR. That's all they saw. So they saw themselves lying flat with very straight
little red Uganda Knuckles characters.
Yeah, cartoon characters all around it. So it must have been like coming out of consciousness and entering a dream, It must have been, that must have been the real uncanny valley or whatever they call it, Literally coming to consciousness, like waking up and you're already in VR, go figure. That must
I try to warn people that come to my DJ shows that there is some lighting spurt effects. Because that does bring on the seizures, the lighting.
Epilepsy and strobe, even without epilepsy, strobe type effects can do weird thing to some people anyway.
Yeah, you don't know the medical history of your patrons, so it's one line in chat: beware that they're having light go and stuff. So
When I was younger, I used to, you went to gigs and things, and the strobe lights were flashing, so you saw like this slow motion effect of musicians and stuff like that. And in the absence of the strobe light, I learned to mimic it by just flashing my eyes rapidly in a rhythm, and I fell over. So I gave up that idea pretty quickly, because if you stand there flashing your eyelids in an exact rhythm quite fast, you actually are creating your own strobe. And I was so intent on doing it, I didn't realise I was getting dizzy. Fell over as a result. Anyway, I'm digressing again, aren't I? Oh dear. Right. Okay. So I think we probably covered everything we can this week. Whenever I'm closing this show, I like to go around everybody actually anyway, and sort of say, well, what else is happening with you, be it in virtual worlds or real life, so to speak. Anything that's on your mind coming up, or just gone by, or happening at this very moment, for that matter. So let's start with you, Tia. Is anything sort of got your excitement buds, or whatever they're called, up at the moment?
Well, actually, recently I've been studying animation for 3D modeling, and I'm making some real progress to that. So I'm really excited about that. It's been a big hurdle, and I'm hoping to bring some of that into OpenSim once I get more comfortable with the BVH format.
The BVH are the ones we can bring in and actually wear as animations, aren't they?
Yes.
Any animation, actually.
Yeah, is that linked to the idea of NPCs and things, where you could plausibly be modeling an NPC and import? This is hypothetical. I might not even know what I'm talking about, but like be importing an NPC with embedded animation already in it. Or am I?
Well, an animation like the one she's talking about is the same format as your AOs and all that stuff.
Yeah,
so you can do the gestures and things like that with it. Things that'll pop into pose balls and.
Yeah, no, the reason I was thinking of NPCs is traditionally you can do amazing things now, but you like compile the scripts and the animations into, I guess they're in a kind of ball that you then put the NPC into, so that anything that's coded into the invisible ball is what the NPC is doing. So they might walk a distance, bend over, tie their shoelace, stand up again, dance up and down, then walk a bit more in another direction.
Yeah, that's the format she's talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
So you can combine it. Basically, in that instance, you're combining the models with the animations. I just wondered whether you were thinking of anything more complex, like some kind of system where the model could come in with the animations already coded into it. But I guess that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I'm not real up on NPCs, just a little bit. Haven't worked with them at all.
Well, I have a little camera backstage here. You can go to after the show and make your own NPC. It basically records you, your avatar, and everything you're wearing. Although you will find there's problems if you're wearing something that's non-copy. One of our guests the other week had a hole in her chest when her NPC arrived.
Whoops. Because
it was the one item she was wearing that wasn't copy transfer, so it couldn't be recorded by the NPC maker. So you have to make sure you've got all the perms on all the things you're wearing, or you might have embarrassing things missing.
Is that similar to the mirror script for NPCs? Is that basically what that is?
No, it just creates the note card that you need for your, when you click on a box or something, and it creates all the codes and all the UUID numbers of everything you're wearing, and then you put it with a script, and then it reses that.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. I mean, what I do, I will make one for you after the show, after we're off air. But I have actually had several guests here, for example, principally in the Canadian studio, actually. Leah Lobo is my favourite. She's actually always sitting in a chair off the side of the stage, you know. She's frequently a guest, but, you know, the idea was if she can't get in well for some reason, I res an NPC of her avatar in the seats here, and she can still be on the Skype call. And for the viewers, what the camera sees, the only thing missing is her lip movement. They still hear her voice on Skype, and they think she's in World because there's an NPC copy of her.
Oh, now you gave the secret away. They're all going to think we're NPCs.
First it's my potty break. Now it's an NPC thing. What is with you, Mel? Man?
Well, I've given this one away already. We were talking about, you know, I said, well, between you and me, there've been a couple of shows that have been done like that, but you hopefully didn't notice. In an emergency, you know, if you have a Skype but don't have everybody in World for some reason, you know, if you've got a ready-made library of their characters and NPC, you can load it.
That's an interesting idea. I like that.
And yeah, anything you're wearing, you know, as long as it's not copy protected, will be recorded. And your NPC is actually, as Leslie says, it's a single note card. It just lists all the parts that make up your avatar and the size and everything else, and then it lists all your attachments, the clothes you're wearing, by the identifier codes, and you basically apply that as a complex. The note card, you can't just res the note card, you've got to put it in an NPC object, but it basically, that NPC object takes on all the attributes of whatever's encoded in the note card.
Clones you, basically.
Yeah, it makes a clone of you. And then, of course, in that NPC object, you can then script and add the animations that make it move to your requirements, you know.
Well, if you're wearing a AO or that sort of thing, it will take that too. So if you want something that stands still and you want to add the animations later, then it's best to strip off anything that's like an AO and all that other good stuff.
That's a cautionary thing, actually, always when you make NPCs, is to take off anything unessential to the NPC, because they come across with it. And you know, if you can wear a HUD and you're doing your own dance, for example, the NPC will res dancing, you know, and you won't be able to switch it off on the HUD because the HUD's on the NPC and it's using up resources doing it. So you really need to apply the scripts after you brought the NPC in rather than have them attached to the NPC. But yeah, there's different. Sometimes, you know, having an NPC in this sit pose actually would actually be quite useful, because if I actually want to use them on the show, I can just res them in this position onto the chair and they won't look any different from anybody next to them. Whereas
it's the same principle as the dance ball, Mel.
Yeah. I mean, if they weren't if the pose wasn't in with them already, then I would simply have to drag them over and put the right pose into them. It's just two ways to the same end, really. I think give speed.
Well, if you use that dance ball, that club dance ball idea, where you can just drop all the note cards in the seat, and then you click on the seat, and you say, I want a female sitting there, or I want a male sitting there, and whatever's posed in that seat, that's what that avatar will do. You can put about 20 of them in there, and you can pick which one you want.
Yeah, actually, I could keep like one of those dance balls with NPC couples or so that get called up NPCs. Yeah. I could just make a library of all my guests as NPCs, and
then the menu pops up and you pick.
Yeah, you sure could. That would be pretty. Yeah, you could do that.
I could call a big party of all my studio guests, except they wouldn't be here. They'd just be NPCs. I love it.
Well, the nice thing about that is if they're not home and they have Skype on their telephones, they can still talk on their telephones being not home.
One of the shows I did like that was for that very reason. They were mobile. They didn't have the world with them. They only had Skype. So, you know, it was the only way around. The problem, but because we knew in advance they'd be away from home, they'd come in before they went away and made an NPC for me. So, you know.
Yeah.
We solved it by advanced forward thinking, which is not something I do very often. I normally forward think the show the morning before. I should be doing it weeks before, but we never do. Okay, so that was Tia. Leslie, anything else exciting in your personal buzz at the moment?
I have my hair this week.
You had your hair down. Yes, we do. We do owe people an apology for last time Leslie was here. We thought she'd come dressed as Sinead O'Connor.
Yeah.
I saw Sinead O'Connor. So did James on camera. But the one person who didn't see Sinead O'Connor was Leslie herself. And
That's
it wasn't.
I rebaked to make sure I had hair this time. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
Well, it looks good, actually.
The broadcast went out with Sinead O'Connor when it was meant to be going out with Leslie, and it's our fault completely because two of us.
I think I put into YouTube on the bottom there. I usually wear hair.
Yeah.
Well, for me, remember, the Tangle Grid is not just the Expo Grid. It is in a semi-closed grid. We have many things going on over there, so you want to come in, even just look around. Yeah. We got free shops, we got free homes, we got free lots. So if you want to just test us out even, we have a realty agent over there. She's selling regions from $2 right up to $20 US. That's depending, because we base our sales of regions on prims, not on region. Which means if you want 15,000 prims, you pay $15. If you want 10,000 prims, or you pay 10. If you want 2,000 prims, you pay 2. We base it like the old SL did with prims is what you pay for, not the region.
So I could get a big parcel of land and create a 4-sided box on it, which is, say, 6 prims for 6 cents.
No.
Sorry. I've been naughty, aren't I?
The prims have to be in the region, and, because of the way PayPal works, you need to have at least buy $2.50 worth of prims or $50 because they don't go any lower than that.
I was joking.
I know. You're so funny, Mel. Really.
I am so not funny, aren't I? Yes.
But please come on over. Like I said, Tangle Grid is a full-blown grid, and it's got beautiful things. It's a gorgeous grid, if I must say.
I actually think that was. I should mention this. I'll leave it till I'm off air. Actually, I think Safari came to Tangle Grid the other week for something.
Yeah, the same time we went to that farm. Actually.
Oh, that was the same day. Right. Okay.
Mystic Haven you went to.
Yeah, that was right. Well, for some reason, for some reason, I tried to teleport over and it crashed my Firestorm. I relogged
that. Don't get me on Firestorm and.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, something happened, and eventually, after about 10, so it wasn't just refusing to teleport me; it was actually crashing Firestorm. So I sort of gave up. So I didn't actually make that one, which is.
I don't know what's going on with that. If anybody could tell me, please do, because I read their blog or whatever you want to call it, and they say it's to do with bandwidth on your end, but that's not true.
I mean, I've been enough to enough of your expos. A few times with Safari, but also on my own, and it's never been a problem. So it was just driving me up the wall that day, and I thought.
Do you have the latest version of Firestorm? Because I think that's where the issue is. It's built for 9, and we're 8.3.
Oh God, yeah, the usual. Expletive.
So we tell people to roll back 2 or 3 versions if they want to come to Tangle, because they've gone too far ahead too fast.
That might explain some of the weird phantom terrain that I've suddenly got. Well, phantom mesh, because
what version is this one? 9?
I'm not entirely. 5. Firestorm 64. 5.
No, I mean version of OpenSim on this one.
Oh, I'm running 8. Oh, I'm only at the last of the 8 series.
There you go.
If I updated to 9, right, I would have a problem with some of my meshes which don't have proper collision script meshes. Yeah. So at the moment, until I've sorted out, until I really start rebuilding bits of it, so I'm safer staying with this 8 series. because I want to be able to walk on my meshes.
Yeah,
and I have a lot, unfortunately, that don't have collision meshes. And
I could be wrong about this too, but the reason that there's such a thing as bad mesh, and you need to get rid of it, is mesh has a recall. It keeps trying to load and load and load, and if it's bad, that means little tiny triangles that you see. It will keep trying to load, and that just drags your grid down. So that's why if you see triangles, get rid of that mesh. We classify it as bad mesh. So that's why.
Okay, that's the thought. I do occasionally get. Well, actually, I don't get any lag on this grid at all. As a rule, even though I'm logging in across computers, so it's not like I'm on the same machine. But what I have noticed, and James noticed one week too, is I'm used to getting usually about 120 frames a second here, but we were both experiencing a sort of thing where the frame rate in Firestorm, without any impact on the server, for some reason coming right down to really low figures.
You might want to check see if you got any triangles floating around, and the only way you can do that is if you edit a piece of around. Like I take my cursor and I drag it across the land, and you cam in and you can see the little triangles pop up for a few seconds, and get rid of it.
Okay, so you just drag naked across the mouse naked across the land.
And you'll see triangles popping up, and you got to get rid of that.
Thank you for that. Then that is a little hint I didn't know about, and useful for your teaching tier, I suspect. What to do with those messy meshes?
Get rid of them.
I always want to say that phrase. I made a final mess here. I mean mesh. It's a nice play.
There goes your teeth on the ground again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Right, closing thoughts from you, James.
No, I don't really. The continued exploration in different locations and different technologies, but just a really entertaining show.
Yep, indeed. Okay. I forgot to check where Safari is going this Wednesday, but a reminder about March, of course, because, February 4th is Tier's opening event for Avatar Haven, and February the 5th is the opening day of the month-long Sci-Fi Expo.
And the picture contest.
And the picture contest. Not forgetting the picture contest yet. Okay, I shall crack a joke. Everybody smile. We have a picture. Right. Oh, it didn't work. Wonder what happened there. Right, and of course, March, mid-March, we have the Virtuosos Practices Conference, but largely over in Second Life, I suspect. And the week after that, we have our next Hypergrid International Expo, which will be in 5 flavors at the moment, maybe 6 or 7, you don't know. It means we have 5 sessions, now including Portuguese in our agenda as well. So it's all happening, and maybe the new year may still be quietish, but it sure ain't going to stay that way for long. And we'll be back next week with more of the same. That's it. I'd like to thank James, obviously, for not only being here, but being behind about 20 different cameras that we managed to operate at the same time. It's very clever, that. Thank you, James.
Oh, absolutely, Mel. And you're exactly right. 20 cameras. That's what I have.
Yes, indeed. Who knew? Who knew? I'd also like to thank Leslie Kling from Tangle Grid for good to see her again. So thank you, Leslie.
Oh, you're very much welcome. It's a great time when I come over here. Lots of laughs.
Yeah, too many in my opinion. They're to do with me most of the time, aren't they? Yeah. Oh well. Okay, and also a great thank you to Tia Winters from, of course, Avatar Haven over on DigiWorld. So thank you, Tia. Great to see you.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely wonderful. Okay, well, the party's over for this week, so as I said, we'll be back same time, same place next week with a bit of luck. For now, all I'm going to do is the usual. Wish you a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening, and indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever, but more importantly, whenever you are. We'll see you soon.